Yes, ma'am.
In the back, if we can start the live stream.
Trees. Hey, Jeff, we're going to get going. You all set over there, Reverend? Okay. I'd like to call to order the RTA Audit, Safety, Compliance, and Real Estate Committee. Teresa, if you could call roll, please.
Mayor Kumar,
Here.
Ms. Moss,
Here.
Mr. Joyce, Ms. Mersman,
Here.
and Mayor Weiss.
Here.
We have 4 committee members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have one item on the agenda for today. It's a security update on crime stats and other initiatives of the authority. And we have Chief Jones and Deputy Chief of Police Gettings to present.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Chairperson Kumar, committee members, Reverend Lucas, and members of the board. My name is Deirdre Jones, and I am the Chief of GCRTA Police Department. With me is Deputy Chief Michael Gettings, and today we will be presenting on transit police updates. So with regard to our Part 1 crimes, and for those of you who are not familiar, Part 1 crimes are more serious offenses that fall under felony statutes. Most of our Part 1 crimes have stayed fairly consistent over the last 3 years, and we did a comparison between 2021 and this year. While there is a decline in the number of thefts, we do see a slight uptick in felony assaults and an increase in auto thefts, which we believe to be consistent with the rise in thefts of Kias and Hyundais. Deputy Chief Gettings will elaborate on an initiative that we have created to combat this issue. Our quality of life crimes, again, we did a 3-year comparison between January and June. And while most of our quality of life crimes are down, we do see an increase in those trespassing on the system from 34 in 2022 to 59 actually this year. To combat this problem, Transit Police has increased the number of station checks with the goal of reducing not only trespassing but other quality of life crimes and Part 1 crimes. Transit Police also deploys its crisis intervention co-responder teams to assist those trespassers who may need resources. In addition to providing customer service, our transit ambassadors now conduct station checks and alert Transit Police to any security or safety issues that they observe. Although Transit Police has not seen an increase in operator assaults over the last 2 years, we have increased our coach checks by our officers to increase our visibility on the system. Transit police officers board and ride the coach for several stops and engage the operators. In addition, our transit ambassadors continue to ride our coaches, offering customer service, and have expanded the service to include the Red Line. The number of citations this year has decreased from 480 in 2022 to 358 this year. We believe this is related to staffing issues. We also believe that once we return to full staffing, the number of parking tickets and uniform traffic citations will increase. Transit Police sees an overall decrease from 2022 with regard to electronic device thefts from 36 to 23. We do believe that the slight increase in June can be attributed to people using the system and inadvertently leaving their items on coaches or trains. Transit Police will meet with marketing to determine if signage reminding our users to make sure they have their belongings before they deboard can be created and put on the system. The number of interactions with our unsheltered population remains consistent. In addition to meeting and following up with those on the system who require resources, our crisis intervention co-responder teams have extended their reach by working all 3 shifts. Deputy Chief Gettings will further explain crisis intervention specialist interactions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start by talking about a program that we started in early July. What we noticed was we saw an increase in theft of vehicles from our system, particularly Hyundais and Kias, and this is a nationwide issue. Recently, there was an article talking about a 94% increase in thefts of autos in the city of Cleveland. The majority of those thefts are Hyundais and Kias. So what we've seen is, as a result of this, we've seen people who are on our system and either stealing cars or attempting to steal cars. And so what we tried to do here was we created a free steering wheel lock program for Hyundai and Kia owners that are RTA employees. It was created in 2023. This is, again, in response to a nationwide theft problem. Individuals were putting videos on TikTok, and as a result of those TikTok videos, people are just copycats out there. They're not really doing anything with the car, so like traditionally you would think of a car and it would be taken to a chop shop and there'd be some value to it. Really, this is just more of a joyride situation, then they drop the vehicle off, or they commit a crime with the vehicle, drop it off, and then they leave. All of these steering wheel locks that we're giving to our employees are free of charge. We got them from Hyundai and Kia, and to date we have 53 employees who have taken advantage of this offer, and we continue to offer it for the next few months. What we hope is, though, that this is not just about stopping the theft, but rather stopping destruction as well, because we do have, in addition to thefts of the vehicles, we have individuals who are just breaking into the vehicles, unable to steal them, and then the vehicles themselves are damaged. So there's a national recall by Kia and Hyundai, and even if you have the recall, your car is still susceptible to somebody coming by, breaking the window, stripping the column, and they don't get your car, but the significant amount of damage that's caused is very expensive for the individual. So this visual deterrent that we're offering them is something that we believe is going to help with that, and it's going to decrease the issues that we see on our system. I'd like to talk about school safety. We had some issues last year in and around schools and bus stops. So the Cleveland Metropolitan School District reached out to us, and they talked about how can we work together to help on school safety. So we created a cross-agency team between CMSD, CDP, and RTA Transit Police. And what we do is we meet bi-weekly and we share intelligence. We also look to maximize visibility at hotspots. So CMSD has identified 4 schools as hotspots, and what we've done is we've assigned individuals to those schools. Either we will be there, Transit Police, or Cleveland Police, to address those issues during the school release. So, and we also develop proactive cross-agency solutions for any other issues that might come up. So this bi-weekly meeting, I believe, is a good partnership just to talk about anything that's going on related to individuals riding our system, the children who are on our system, or anything that's happening in and around our shelters. We also created a cross-agency team with Cleveland Hopkins Airport. Cleveland Hopkins reached out to us and said that they have a significant increase, or they're seeing a significant increase in security concerns or issues at the airport. So we worked with CDP as well as Cleveland Hopkins to address some of these issues. One of the things that we did, though, was we sent our Transit Police crisis intervention specialists out there because we saw an issue with some of the unsheltered population at the airport and our system. So we sent our crisis intervention specialists out there to work with these individuals to try to kind of help them, anybody who is experiencing a mental health crisis, try to help them get the assistance they needed. What we saw was that many of the individuals who were on our system were also at the airport, so we felt it was a good partnership to work with them to try to address some of the issues. Excuse me. Transit Police staffing. At the beginning of 2023, we had a 27%, we were down 27% of our officers. So we met with Human Resources and to review our practices and to understand, they wanted to understand our needs. And in early 2023, in February 2023, we worked with the FOP on the collective bargaining agreement. And as part of that agreement, we enhanced our pay structure, and we also created a 12-hour shift agreement. Now, the 12-hour shifts don't go into effect until October 2023, but I'm happy to say that as a result of the enhanced pay structure and the lure of 12-hour shifts, we were able to create a lateral transfer process that allows state-certified officers to come to our department from other agencies. This lateral transfer process, as a result of this lateral transfer process and the enhanced pay structure and 12-hour shifts, we've seen a 41% reduction in our 41% reduction in the vacancies, and we anticipate that by the end of 2023, all of our vacancies will be filled. Our transit ambassador interactions. Our transit ambassador program has been very well received. We currently have 10 transit ambassadors on our system. We are currently expanding that to 16. We are in the process of interviewing candidates as we speak. Our transit ambassadors are out there doing coach checks, train checks, station checks. They're out there just with customer service interactions. So if a transit ambassador, if a person doesn't understand how to use a TVM, or they just don't understand how to read the map or how to go from point A to point B, our transit ambassadors are out there to help them with that. But the ambassadors also will refer any issues they see. So if they see a problem on the system, they are in direct contact with transit police with their radios. So they will contact us if they see any crimes in progress or any suspicious activity, and we will send our transit police to address the issue. The ambassadors also are out there for service quality referrals as well. So again, I mentioned any kind of problems with the ticket vending machines, if they're malfunctioning, or just any kind of cleanliness issue, any kind of quality of life issue on the system. Our transit ambassadors are out there notifying us, letting us know, and we're able to address it much more quickly than we were in the past without them. As the chief mentioned, we also have crisis intervention specialists. We currently have 4 intervention specialists on our system. Those intervention specialists team up with an officer, and they are across all 3 shifts. So we see them, we have a first shift, 2 on first, 1 on second, and 1 on third. So far, we've created 327 case files. A case file means we interacted with somebody who is in a crisis or had maybe unsheltered or had some type of mental health issue, and we're working with them to try to get them some help. So we have a total of 66 social service agencies around the greater Cleveland area, like Northeast Ohio Coalition of the Homeless, Frontline, who we work with to connect the individuals with the service. So if a person needs housing, if a person needs food, if they need any kind of short-term shelter, our intervention specialists are there to help them get what they need. So far, we've had 5 orders of detention, 2 from Cuyahoga County Probate, and I want to kind of explain what that is. If a person is in a serious mental health crisis and they need help, but they don't have an advocate, they don't have a family member or a friend that says, hey, this person really needs help, we need to get them the help that they need, our crisis intervention specialists step in and they work with the probate court to get that individual help. Sometimes they're having such a serious mental health crisis, they don't even realize, so they're not able to get the help they need. So we kind of said, we step in and we address that issue for them. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? CEO?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a basic question as a relatively new board member. Could you just describe the jurisdiction of RTA police or the types of calls that RTA police would respond to versus one of the municipalities or the county?
Sure. Our jurisdiction is similar to, let's say, the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department. So under the Ohio Revised Code, our jurisdiction is wherever our buses and trains go. So if our buses and trains go into Shaker, we have jurisdiction in Shaker. If our buses and trains go into Westlake, we have jurisdiction in Westlake. So it's not just our shelters, not just our facilities, buses and trains, but also the area surrounding them. So pretty much wherever we go, wherever transit goes, we have jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. So the stats that you shared at the beginning are things happening on RTA property, on RTA vehicles, or sort of around where a transit police officer is available to assist?
Right, so that would be probably anything to do with our customers, our employees, on our system, trains, buses, shelters, at our facilities, our rail stations, things like that. Yeah, so it would be all over all over Cuyahoga County. Yes.
Great, thank you. And I think my last question, I missed when you said how many transit ambassadors we have?
So currently we have 10 transit ambassadors, full-time transit ambassadors that are employed. We have expanded the program to 16, and we are in the process of interviewing. We actually have 3 offers out right now, and we are in the process of interviewing for the other 3 positions. So we were hoping to have it filled by the end of this month. I anticipate it's going to be probably sometime in mid-September we have all those positions filled.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I wanted to comment on the ambassadors because I'm on the train.
President, is your microphone on? Okay.
I want to comment on the ambassadors because I'm on the trains. I'm on all of the systems. They've been doing an excellent job. I've been watching them in motion when they've had to address a situation on the train and so forth. And of course, they always come to see if there's anything they can do for me. But I really am proud of what the ambassadors are doing, and I'm glad we're going to add those other few, and that'll give us a full complement for the ambassador program.
Thank you. Reverend Lucas, if I can also add with our transit ambassadors and our crisis intervention specialists, they're not just on the system, but they also participate in a lot of our community engagement events so that the visibility is out there and people know that the transit ambassadors and the crisis intervention specialists exist. They interact with the community. They've worked with Operation Kid Watch, Operation Community Watch, and anytime we need volunteers to go to a lot of these public or community engagement events, and we usually have at least one ambassador or one crisis intervention person working with us. So thank you.
Just to follow up on the ambassador program, what is our total number? So this has been going on for about a year now, and we keep ramping up. What would we say fully staffed is?
Currently fully staffed, for budgeted positions, currently fully staffed would be 16. So right now we have 10. We just increased it from 10 to 16, I would say, probably within the last 60 days. So the process of actually interviewing, hiring, background check, it takes a little while. But fully staffed will be 16 at the time. So that's when you look at our budget. If you would ask me, what's our budget would be 16.
Because that's my concern, is because they usually travel in pairs, sometimes even more than pairs. And when you do, if you say 16, that's 8 sets out there. I presume that's only the first shift, or do they do all 3 shifts?
They're working first and second shift.
So I guess I'm just saying that, I worry about them having enough presence, So if the idea is to do that, and I'm glad Reverend Lucas has seen them, but in general, when you get, and I don't know if they're concentrating on certain lines or whatever, but I guess if I'm thinking of, I think of the Downtown Alliance, and you really run into those people as they're walking around downtown and you see them. I guess I would like to see in the future that being a more funded position, if the idea is for us to kind of shift to this intervention and not have conflict.
So I agree with you 100%. I think that one of my primary issues was that we want to roll the program out, but roll it out in a way that's safe and that we understand, because this is all new to us. But
Right.
At the same time, presence is important. So having a program but nobody sees it, that's not a good program. So what we did was we rolled it out solely on the health line. And as we saw the success of the program, we started, and the comfort, we had to train our individuals to how to interact with people. And so I'd rather train them interacting with, a few people here or there rather than larger groups. But as we train them, now we feel comfortable spreading them out. We are putting them in a higher visibility, higher profile location. So we have spread them to the red line, and we are having them go to, let's say, the higher concentration of individuals. So if I can have somebody at a station that has, 500 riders riders a day versus 5 riders a day, we're going to be at the 500. So we are using a statistical analysis to move them to locations where they can be more visible and they can be more helpful to the public, right? Because if I only help 5 people a day versus the potential to help 500, that's definitely more important to us. So the chief and I have been working on making sure, we're working with Dr. Kaver to make sure that those individuals not only are trained properly, but when they're out trained properly, they are useful, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can add real quick, I want to thank GCRTA's executive staff because they have truly listened, they've paid attention, and when we talk about expanding the program, they've been more than open to doing that. I was recently in LA for an LA Metro event, and they have 335 transit ambassadors. The good thing about that is they modeled their program after ours, which is good. So while I'm not asking Dr. Cave or Ms. Terry for 335 transit ambassadors, I know that they are amenable to increasing as we go along incrementally. Thank you.
If I could just piggyback for a moment. Chief, you read my mind. I was going to ask you to kind of comment on what other agencies are doing, because the way that I'm hearing the question, which I think is a good one, I don't think we have the answer quite yet, but I'd like us to evaluate almost a ratio of ambassador to passenger interaction. So, Mike, that's what you're kind of talking about, is getting to that point. What are we seeing in other agencies? So you mentioned 300 and some at LA. I mean, their land area is a lot different than Cleveland as well, and the concentration. But I think it bodes well to the conversation about what kind of ratio are we looking to have maybe within a year's time, especially as we ebb and flow through the seasonality of ridership as well. So I'd imagine your summer interactions might be a lot different than your winter time. And how do we get to a common or comfortable number? You know, it's at some point, are we planning for 50, for example, to be our kind of golden number, to make sure that we have enough visibility so that the program's successful, but also manageable so that we don't just have folks out there that aren't successful. So I think that's where the question is coming from. And I think maybe it would be prudent for us to kind of evaluate on a 6-month basis and then be able to kind of look at the market, see what else is out there, the LA Metros, and then somebody a little smaller, so we don't give Raj a heart attack over there with the with the positions, and then come back with a goal for the end of the year for hiring again. Thanks.
At the risk of feeling like we're piling on, I agree with everything we've been saying, and I did not realize that the ambassadors were not on the rail lines, but I had not seen one on, after,
They're on there now.
So initially, similar to a police officer, when we send our police officers on the road, there's a training period, right? So there is that field training officer period. We have that for our transit ambassadors as well. So we have that training period to get them accustomed to interacting with people, and then our officers and our sergeant who's in charge of the program is able to make sure that they're at the level he wants them at, and he feels comfortable. And then at that point, we've been moving them to different areas. So they are on the red line right now, I can tell you.
Okay. But not the blue and green yet.
So we will be expanding to blue and green. I know that we have been sending them on the blue and green periodically, but for right now, I know that we are sending them to our stations that have higher ridership and also higher reports of incidents. So I think that visibility is very important to kind of reduce the reports or the complaints we get.
Great, thank you. I did have just a couple questions on the crisis intervention specialists. Their background, are these licensed social workers? Are they other kinds of mental health professionals? Refresh my recollection.
Our crisis intervention specialists are licensed social workers. Okay. We would have nothing less. They do respond with one officer when called, or sometimes they just go out and patrol with that one officer, and they work in the co-responder program. They've been very successful in not only with their interactions, but with their follow-ups as well.
And help me out, I think you said there were 4 currently, and how are they scheduled?
There are 4 currently, and we have them on all 3 shifts. We have 2 in the morning, 1 in the on the afternoon shift, and 1 on night shift. I'm hoping that at some point, Dr. Kaver, Mike, and Ms. Terry and I can sit down and look at even expanding the crisis intervention program as well.
Great, okay, thank you.
I'll just,
First of all, let me apologize for interrupting you, Mayor. That's number one. Number two, I guess I was just fortunate enough to be on the blue line when they were on the blue line. So that's why I saw them there. Then, of course, I saw them on the red line downtown, so that, I saw them. I'm a witness. Even though I am the father of the ambassador program, so you know I'm gonna make them work. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
if I may, just a quick, I just wanted to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, 1 out of the 4 CIS that we have, or social workers, are also assigned to the airport?
So we have been working, I did request that the shifts send not just individuals to the airport, but all of our crisis intervention specialists to the airport. So we have been periodically going to the airport. They don't stay at the airport full time. They do move around our system because while the airport, we have been getting concerns from the airport with the unsheltered population, we have been helping them, but we also have concerns all over our system. So I do make sure that they do check it. We have what we call a special attention at the airport, which means that they prioritize the airport, but they are also around the rest of our system during the day.
Okay, thank you. And then one other, just wanted to make sure that the board understands kind of the nuances of some of the items that they mentioned, especially for those areas that have received media attention recently, just in the city, because we are working, as mentioned, with our partners. The school bell times. Just wanted to make sure, and Doc, this is where you kind of keep me honest as far as the scheduling. We do have that bi-weekly meeting that was mentioned, but we also have worked to adjust the school bell times when necessary to be able, this trip times to match the school bell times in those high kind of, I don't want to say violence, but areas where we had issues, or the CMSD had issues, so that we could help out. So I want to make sure that we kind of balance our TP presence also with the scheduling efforts, and that was done in certain areas as well. And also kind of roving to make sure that we had our intelligence communicated to the city so that they understand that we're a partner. And I think it's helped tremendously, particularly in those 4 areas that we found to have the high incident of violence over the summer and toward the end of the school year. In neighboring businesses, a lot of times that's kind of the catch-all for some of the conflict that happens between students, and then also just the neighboring blocks around the school times. So we definitely are working with CPD to make sure that we can provide that presence when needed as well in those areas.
Yes, we did work with CMSD and CPD to identify, and we did identify 4 schools that they wanted us to prioritize. That was John Adams, John F. Kennedy, Garrett Morgan, and John Marshall. So what we're doing is we are not at all 4. We are taking our resources and we're spreading them out. So CPD is taking 2, we're taking 1, and CMSD is taking the other. So we are assisting our partners with that, but we can't be the only person with the solution. We have to spread our resources out. But we are at one of those 4 locations.
One other thought on the crisis intervention specialist. Maybe when we get a little further down the road, it'd be nice to see kind of a breakdown of the cases, the types of cases, and the resolution of those just over time. And I assume we started in October. That's why the case is created since October. Is that when October 22?
Yeah. So I can kind of just touch base a little bit on this. So what we do is we've seen about 25% of the individuals that we interact with immediately request service. So that means anytime we go out with somebody and they are in crisis, 25% of the individuals will immediately be receptive to receiving service. That would mean that we would contact NEOC, we would contact Frontline, or we transport the person to St. Vincent's to get help. The other 75%, though, just because they don't initially accept service doesn't mean that we don't do any kind of follow-up. So the nice part of the program is that as long as they're willing, they'll give us their name. If they have a phone number, we'll get their phone number. We'll kind of create a good relationship with them. So they know us, we know them, we go out and talk to them. Our crisis intervention specialists will follow up and have conversations with them to encourage them if they do need service, whether they're unhoused or they have some type of mental health issue, that they would maybe continue to talk to them to try to get them those that help that they need. As I mentioned, the 66 social service agencies around Greater Cleveland, that number's great, but if the person's not willing to accept the help and we can't convince them to accept the help, then it doesn't really work. So we're, in addition to the 25% that immediately accept help, that 75%, we're always constantly following up with them. So I can show, we have a spreadsheet. Every time one of our crisis intervention specialists makes a phone call, they document it, even if they don't get a hold of the person. Everything we do is documented, and then we can go back and say, hey, on this case, how many times do we follow up? What's the status? So if you were to say, I can go through those case files and I can pull out a name and I can tell you how many times we've called them, where they traditionally are, where we see them on our system, any kind of relatives they have. And one of the things that we started doing, we realized that family's important. A lot of these individuals do have families, but they're not connected with them. So we've been trying to reconnect them with some of the family members, and some of the family members don't even know where they are. So we've had some success with some of our tougher cases with reconnecting them with the family members, and then once the family gets involved, then it kind of helps us. It encourages the individual to get the help they need, and it kind of helps them through the process.
Great, thank you.
Any final questions from board members of the CEO?
Just a heads up, sitting in place for our Deputy General Manager, Natoya Walker-Minor, is at a funeral today, but it worked out for timing. We have Zakia Wright, who is our Manager of Customer Service at Tower City. So just wanted to make sure that you knew who was sitting there. That's not Natoya. But also, if you had any questions during the board meeting or afterwards, she'd be happy to, I believe, answer about the ambassadors and how they're also impacting Tower City. So just wanted to make sure we made that introduction.
And I just had one follow-up comment from when we were reviewing the slides prior to the meeting on the lateral transfers. One thing that is done there is, while it is an existing police officer and it's going to allow us to fill our ranks, background checks, psychological evaluations, personnel files are all part of that process in ensuring that we get quality candidates and quality hires. And there's some physical agility tests that are done by all officers initially, and that's obviously waived. But in terms of looking at the quality of individual they're trying to attract and that decrease, they go through a rigorous process. I think that's important to note.
Absolutely, and if I can say, TP has done a phenomenal job at being able to close the gap with a lot of the vacancies that we had. I think last time we reported out, we were 23 down, thereabouts. And Mike, you are the ultimate fact checker. Hold on one second. He's like, I got that. And just being able to make sure that we can kind of come to you and saying, hey, we're actually almost there. And there for us is 100%, right? So that's the budgeted number. We've also been starting to think about what do we do if we end up in a waiting list situation. And we've got folks that actually are, exceeding the 100. And so that's conversations about what do we do in that situation, because we never want to be in a position where we say we're fully staffed and we've stopped hiring. We all know that this is like bus operators and mechanics and any other position that really is just always in a circular motion. So we want to be able to strategize with HR, through legal, accounting, everyone else to figure out how do we keep people interested and keep them knocking on our door? And to your point, the lateral transfers is a big part of that. So we will be coming back with a general strategy to make sure that we can keep them coming. And we do have analysis on where those folks are coming from. So if you are interested in that, we can definitely provide that information to you as well.
Any other questions? Okay. If not, thank you very much, the both of you, for the presentation. It was a great overview, very complete, and I think that concludes our committee session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
To adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the RTA Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee. Teresa, will you call the roll?
Mayor Biassiata, Ms. Moss,
Here.
Mr. Sleesman,
Here.
Mayor Weiss,
Here.
and Ms. Welch is virtual, so she cannot be counted, but you have 3 committee members, so you have a quorum.
That's great. We only have one thing on our agenda. It's an interagency agreement. There's going to be a presentation of a reoccurring procurement to allow the authority to utilize the Ohio Multi-Agency Radio Communication System, known as MARCS, for a 3-year period. And Juliana is going to start off by telling us about the process.
Good morning, Chairman Moss, members of the board. My name is Julie Schultz. I'm the IT
Okay, let me interrupt just for 1 second. This is Julia's maiden voyage, so we're here to support you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. I'm the ITS manager for onboard technology, and Sean and I are going to be reviewing the MARCS subscription renewal. Just a little bit of background on the radio system. The entire system was replaced and upgraded in 2019 and 2020. GCRTA utilizes the state's first responder radio system, which is the Ohio Multi-Agency Radio Communication System, or MARCS. GCRTA has an interagency agreement with the state of Ohio. It's also the highest reliability and opportunity for interoperability throughout the state of Ohio. And currently, we are utilizing over 1,000 radios within the authority and transit police. Our current system, we use the MARCS radio system to keep all of our lines of communication open for our operations within bus, rail, paratransit, and transit police. Those 1,000 radios are combined between our dispatch offices, onboard vehicle radios, and our portables. This is just an illustration of our current radio coverage, the highest level in green. We have 13 radio towers throughout Cuyahoga County. This 800 megahertz radio system is managed, maintained, and operated by the state of Ohio. Our MARCS channels are also accessible from anywhere within the state.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, Ms. Moss, committee members and members of the board. My name is Sean Becker. I'm a program contract manager in procurement and responsible for this procurement. So as Julie mentioned, this is an agreement that we have with the state of Ohio. So it's an interagency agreement through Ohio Department of Administrative Services, Office of Information Technology, with the multi-agency radio communication system known as MARCS. So per Ohio Revised Code, section 30643H4 provides that competitive bidding is not required when an expenditure is made from another political subdivision, public agency, public transit system, regional transit authority, the state, or the federal government, or as a beneficiary under a state or federal procurement contract, or as a participant in a Department of Administrative Service contract under B of section 125.04 of the revised code. So a little bit about the MARCS system. It's a redundant network utilizing both microwave and fiber optics. They have over 360 towers throughout Ohio, and this provides for a 99.71 aggregate voice coverage, so it's a very reliable system. Has low monthly subscription fees, and that cost is based off of a per unit device by month, and that's $25 per month per device. And as Julie mentioned, currently we have over 1,000 radios in our system that's on the MARCS network. And MARCS has over 3,000 public safety and public service agencies, so this really shows that this is really a reliable network. All the first responders in Ohio, agencies similar to ourselves using this network. And the recommendation. Staff requests that the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees the award of an interagency agreement renewal with the Ohio Department of Administrative Services, Office of Information Technology, Multi-Agency Radio Communication System to provide 700, 800 megahertz wireless digital radio network services in an amount not to exceed $1,200,000 for a period of 3 years. And at this time, we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'd first like to thank you, and I'd also like for the presentation and make a note is that, so we have 13 towers around the county. Previously, our old system was very antiquated and only had 4. and there's a lot of interaction. So the network is actually across the whole state. So in a case of an emergency, that first responders could communicate with each other. And we do have a lot of radios. The bus drivers have them, the train, and the police. So that's why the amount is 1.2 million. But each individual one is a negotiated price by the state for $25 a radio. So having put that in there, does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, please.
One, the amount, is that based on a per radio, correct?
Yeah, so it's $25 per radio per month. They bill quarterly. We only get billed for the radios that we actually use. So we have over 1,000 radios right now. That could fluctuate. It could go up as we move through this agreement. But we only get billed the $25 per month per device that we actually utilize.
Yeah, I know in the recent state budget, and I guess this is maybe a Raj question, is that there is some reimbursement for Mark's radios. I know that will positively affect cities, and I'm not sure if that would affect RTA, but my thinking is it should. So I guess I would just ask for a follow-up on that. This doesn't have to hold it up, but there could be a cost savings there.
We'll certainly take a look into it. Thank you.
Yeah, and this contract is just strictly for the subscription too, not the actual devices, which we bought through Motorola as well, so.
There was, and I haven't seen the final verbiage. We're going to have a mayor's update soon, but my understanding was there was going to be some support, revenue support from the state for that monthly subscription cost. So I'm not sure where that quite ended up, but that may be a positive for us.
Thank you.
Just for my information as a new board member, not that I necessarily think we have to explore it too far, but what would an alternative be to this if we were to go a different direction?
So prior to utilizing the Marks network, we did a big, huge radio replacement for all of our vehicles and dispatch centers in 2018, $15 million project. Our transit police were on the Marks system, but our bus and our rail line was utilizing 4 towers that we leased on cell towers that only kind of provided coverage through Cuyahoga County. It was spotty, it was not reliable. We had to also lease the towers, as well as we had to pay a vendor to maintain that system. So that was the alternative. I think as you saw the slide, we have a 99.7 reliability for that voice coverage. So it's when we're in a situation where a bus is down or needs to talk to somebody, or a transit police officer needs something, that reliability is a key factor. So that's the alternative, is that we go back to maintaining 4 towers, and we can also, with the Marks network, we can go all the way to the border of Ohio, a little bit past that, and go to Columbus. The transit police officers have that interoperability, and they can go throughout the whole state. So.
Any other questions?
And just to add on that, I'm sorry. Prior to the radio replacement study, we hired a consultant to kind of do an assessment of what's our current state, what's our current coverage, what other opportunities are out there. The big recommendation that from that study was that we utilize the Marks network. So we had a third party study as well. So.
Is there a motion to take this to the full board?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second, Mayor Weiss.
Okay, will anyone opposed? Okay, this will go to the full board. That concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call a meeting of the RTA Committee on the whole board. Ask you to read the roll.
Okay. President Lucas,
Here.
Ms. Moss,
Here.
Mayor Biassiata, Mr. Joyce, Mayor Kumar,
Here.
Ms. Mersman,
Here.
Mr. Sleesman, Mayor Weiss,
Here.
and Ms. Welch. We have 6 committee members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have one item, and well, look who's going to do it, Dawn Tarker. Good. How you doing, Don?
Very well, thank you. Good morning.
Good to see you. Let's hear about the code book.
Thank you, Reverend Lucas. Good morning. I'm Dawn Tarka. I am an attorney in the authority's legal department. We're here to talk about a few provisions that we're adding and updating in the board's policies. By way of background, and I'm going to give a little bit of an extended background today, the board's policies were codified by resolution in 1989, and the authority's operations continued, and I think over time our operations evolved, and the policies didn't quite keep up with the evolution in how we're operating. So a few years ago, we undertook a project to review and update the policies and bring them in line with our current operations. Presently, there is a provision in the code book that states that they're subject to review and revision every 3 years. So that will prevent the need to have to do an overall review again. The code book, or what's commonly called the code book, is officially the codified rules and regulations of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Those are the broad, overarching policies that are issued by the Board of Trustees to give direction to the authority as to how to operate, or what the authority has the right or the ability or authority to do. There are also administrative procedures. Those administrative procedures are issued by the general manager, and some but not all, depending on what the board policy is, some of those administrative procedures implement the board's policies. We also have personnel policies. Those are internal policies, whereas the code book is generally outward-facing. It advises the public as well as the authority how we operate. The personnel policies are internal. They govern the relationship between the authority and its employees. Those policies are approved by the board. We also have personnel procedures, and those are the procedures that implement the personnel policies. Right now, I'm going to hand the lectern over to George Fields to talk about the first provision that we are considering today.
Thank you, Dawn. Good morning, Mr. President, Ms. Terry, members of the board. We are talking about the use of temporary staffing agencies and code book revision to be able to do so. Just to give you some background on how we utilize temporary staffing agencies here at the authority, particularly a number of reasons can come through to use an agency. One being that we are ramping up to hire a person permanently. We have a business continuity need to be able to fill that position temporarily until that permanent hire occurs. Additionally, the authority engages in a number of special projects that could be temporary, long-term, 6 months to a year. In those special projects, we may need to supplement or add to our staffing by providing temporary resources that don't need to be hired in a permanent fashion. Particularly, we'll add resources when we don't have the internal expertise that a temporary resource or temporary agency may have, and or if the size and scope of the project is just going to outweigh the resources that we have internally. As far as rates for temporary staffing agencies, we typically see rates at a rate of up to $75 per hour for positions in the professional level, the administrative ranks or the technical ranks. This would include positions such as administrative assistant, executive assistant, payroll, financial accountants, clerks, human resource specialists, recruitment or recruiters. And then we also see a higher level of fund or rates that come from temporary staffing agencies for more specialized positions, such as engineering, supervisory management level, finance, information technology. These rates are up to rates, so these are not the rates that we actually gain when we go out and procure for temporary staffing agencies, but these are rates that we have the ability to negotiate up to. And they do include, from the staffing agencies firm, they do include a full blended rate of what the agency pays their employee, and in turn what they market to the GCRTA. As I mentioned, a couple of those position types, typically those position types are in the non-represented range. On some rare occasion, we do have positions where we need a temporary resource for a bargaining unit role. We seek those types of temporary situations only after exhausting all of our internal efforts to be able to fill in for the bargaining unit position, and only after making sure that we haven't had any type of contract violation with regard to the collective bargaining agreements that we're in.
As a result of the need that George just described, we are proposing to add a policy to the code book, section 28303, and that would provide the authority up to those certain rates that were just described to retain temporary staffing agencies. And the board approval would be based on those hourly rates instead of the individual contracts that we do now. Our next provision relates to records retention.
Reverend, are we able to talk about these individually?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. So I was doing some math on my calculator, and for administrative professional staff, that would be up to $312,000 on a yearly basis, and on the and the other professional administration would be $156,000. And we kind of have this $100,000 maximum when someone has to be approved by the board. And I guess I'm trying to think of a circumstance. Who would we be paying $312,000, which is really, when you think about who else works here at RTA, no one besides Ms. Terry makes anywhere near that. What would we do? And I don't know if I felt comfortable. Maybe I would feel more comfortable that coming back to the board if we're going to hire somebody at such a high level. And I know these are maximums, but this is public information, and that's also what the staffing agency will also know what their maximums are. So it gives me concern that these pay rates are quite high.
Ms. Moss, to answer your question with regard to the pay rates, so we looked at also a 5-year time frame to try to adjust for inflation and how those pay rates will actually increase over a period of time, in an effort to not have to come back to you if we have to end up being in a position of going over a pay rate maximum for a particular position. You're correct. In any of the temporary scenarios that we get into, and I'm just thinking the ones that we've had in the past year, we wouldn't be in the $312,000 range. And if we were actually going to approach the $100,000 range, we would come back to this board to help you understand what that circumstance was and what that situation was.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I'll just piggyback if there is not an additional comment from legal. We've had robust discussion, right, at the executive level and at the director level to talk about what the thresholds mean. And there's absolutely no argument that we come back when we approach 100. So we never have a habit of exceeding that without coming back to letting the board know what's going on. We had George to kind of give a little bit more insight today to assist on and what the temporary really means, because we didn't want that also to mislead people that we're talking about, operators, or that we're paying one individual on a temporary basis. We're actually talking about staffing firms. But we absolutely are not comfortable with 312, just to be able to move forward in that vein. But we would come back to the board when we approach 100. I don't know if there's additional language that we need to add to make sure that that's outlined there, but that is the impetus, I believe, behind the
Because we wouldn't know if it were, unless they started getting close to at least 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that amount, and then all of a sudden, that person's already been here 6 months, and we've become dependent upon them. And then also, if you ever wanted to hire that person, that kind of like sets a tone as far as wage, and their coworkers, how are they going to be feeling about that the person sitting next to them is making twice as much? To be honest, I'm very uncomfortable with these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I was thinking about resigning from the board and applying for the $300 job. All right, anything else? Anything else from you, Dawn?
Board President, could I ask a question on this?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So understood that these amounts are both what the temporary employee makes as well as what RTA pays to the staffing agency for providing the employee. These are maximum, so do we have information on how that cost is normally set? Is the payment to the temporary staffer commensurate to the full-time RTA staffer, and then there's an overhead amount going to the staffing agency, or how do we know if we're getting up to these maximums or not based on different roles that are being filled?
Yeah, Ms. Mersom, so there is an overhead that the agencies charge the RTA or any other agency. They build in the hourly rate that they provide the employee, the benefits that they provide the employee. They charge that back to the RTA to be able to figure out how they can get their gross profit margin. Typically, when we go into a temporary engagement, we will try to be as close as possible to what our normalized rate is for our employee. That includes their benefits and all of their fringe that go along with their particular rate of pay. So example would be if we were going to get an administrative assistant and we would normally pay, say, $25 an hour, then when we go to the agency, we'll try to make sure that we're somewhere within that fringe benefit rate of pay that we provide to our administrative assistant, probably roughly somewhere around the low $40 to $44 an hour, to be able to equate it. To Ms. Moss's point, if we ever ended up getting up to a point where we were going to go temp to perm, we want to make sure that we haven't paid well beyond what we normally would pay our regular employee. Sometimes that works out just fine. Sometimes the specialized expertise needed is beyond where our employees are at, but we're also providing going to get that expert position for just a period of time and not on a permanent basis.
Thank you. So that connects to something that I think Ms. Birdsong-Terry alluded to too, which is how do we define temporary and how long are we potentially using temporary staffing to fill? Do we have any sense of what that has looked like in the past, and if we're talking about a couple of months while we onboard someone or longer periods for certain positions that are difficult to fill?
Utilize most times in about a 6-month engagement. Sometimes it could be up to a year if it's on a project, but more times than not, we're talking about somewhere between 6 months to a year.
Thank you. And then my final question is, if the intent is to come back to the board for amounts over $100,000 anyway, how does making this policy change contribute to fluidity or the ability of RTA to move more nimbly as needed?
To be able to provide that ability to not have to contract individually, but be able to nimbly work through the ability to market GCRTA's temporary staffing needs to multiple agencies through our procurement team, recognize that we already have a rate structure in place, but then also recognize there's another threshold that we still need to keep our mindset to, that if we're in a situation where we're at a $100,000 range, yes, we will come back to this board.
If I may, I know that there are a lot of questions and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because anytime that we're paying any outside firms or vendors, we want to make sure that we're good stewards of public dollars. If I may provide a quick suggestion. If we can utilize this time from today in preparation for the board meeting at the end of the month to provide a little bit more detail to the board members regarding examples of previous contracts where we might have been able to kind of employ this type of policy, and then also some of the homework behind the analysis and the market rate that you've got in front of you for the maximum fees. Because I think what I also want to do is make sure that we're all comfortable going forward with what the market rates are. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if we are to reduce or change the numbers, what does that do for our ability to attract those staffing agencies? And will that hinder us to make sure that we can get a good contract to get the labor that we need, but also understanding that we come back to the board at the $100,000 mark to let you know for advisory purposes of what we're doing so that you're understanding where we're going. I think that's a twofold process, and I'd like to make sure that we provide that information to the board so that you have a complete understanding before going to potential vote later in the month, if that's acceptable.
What are you suggesting to our committee meeting at that meeting first? That's what you're suggesting.
I'm suggesting that we provide more background information to the board for consideration in preparation for the end of the month so that you feel a little bit comfortable. Hopefully, we can give you that background detail so you have time to scrutinize, and then we can have the liaison, me, myself, for the committee of the whole, to hop on the phone with any board members that may have additional questions.
So do we instead, you'd present it at the board meeting and we vote, and we wouldn't need to have a separate committee meeting because it's
I don't
in
think
the hotel?
No.
The hope. My question, I guess, one of the things I would like addressed is a clarification. When would you be coming to the board? Because if you're doing it something that's like paying someone $312 an hour, but you are only doing it for 2 weeks, that would you never be near the 100,000 threshold, but you'd be paying at a rate that would. And I don't even know how I feel about that. I just would like clarification what that means, and should that be language that would be included in the resolution, so that it's clear when someone needs to come, when you'd be bringing this back to the board.
That's excellent. That's excellent. All right, anything else? So what we're going to do, we're just going to hold this until this is completed, and then we will vote on taking it up at that time. Is that correct?
I believe what we'll do is we'll provide more information between now and the next meeting. I don't know if you need to vote to take it to the next meeting at this juncture. That would be up to the board, but I would suggest that our staff provide more information for analysis and digestion between now and the next board meeting. Let me ask Janet, as far as the need to vote and then have more information, it can always be tabled at the next board meeting, I would imagine. I don't want to hold up the process, but I think our action item is to provide more information to the board so that you feel more comfortable upon voting at the next meeting. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. The board does not have to, the committee of the whole does not have to vote to move this matter forward, either to committee or to the full board.
Okay, so the idea that we would bring additional information today would just hold it where it is. If the board is comfortable with the information that is provided, would it be able to be moved to the next meeting?
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
that's what we'll do. All right, thank you very much.
I just have one comment, and I think it's great that you're going to get us additional information. I think if the authority has a shorter-term need, and just to your point on that higher rate, the rates I see out there, I see 150 to 165 in some senior level finance positions. If you've got a critical need to fill, you also have to take into account what a fully loaded rate for an employee is in terms of the benefits, the health care and things like that, that sometimes are 25 or 30% in addition to that. And you've got a person coming in a hired gun for a short period of time that doesn't have any guarantee of long-term employment. To track those people, at least in some of the finance positions, I just use that as an example that I see, that's a very reasonable rate. Now, to your point that we need to approve anything over 100,000, I totally agree with that. But when there's a need to come in and take care of business, I think we also have to provide management with that opportunity.
Very good. All right, Dawn, any more?
Yes. Let's return to records retention and release. Ohio law requires RTA to maintain and release public records. Essentially, public records disclosure to the public and records retention are really two sides of the same coin. In our current set of policies, we have a chapter 216 about public records. The records retention provisions are in chapter 650. And chapter 650 is an exact duplicate of personnel policy 700. This, going back to what I mentioned earlier about the policies being codified, operations moving forward, and the policies lagging behind a bit, the provisions in chapter 650 and personnel policy 700 relate both to internal management of human resources department records, and they also contain some provisions that relate to the overall authority's retention of records. So we're recommending amending all of those provisions a bit. First, we would propose removing chapter 650 because it's a duplicate of personnel policy 700. Then the portions of chapter 650 that relate to records retention for the overall authority, we're proposing moving those to chapter 216 together with the public records policy. And that's primarily just the requirement to comply with records retention schedules and references to the Executive Records Management Commission.
All right, any questions concerning this? Anybody up and down? Up and down? All right. That's it?
Well, we're just going to additionally recommend the revised Chapter 216 would also provide our general manager with the authority to establish administrative procedures to execute the records retention aspect. We already have an administrative procedure for
That's what I
public
thought.
records.
We have that, yeah. All right.
So at this point, given our discussion earlier about section 28303, I would request that the Committee of the Whole recommend those provisions related to public records and records retention, specifically chapter 650, chapter 216, and personnel policy 700 to the board for approval.
All right. Any questions at all? Thank you very much. We have a recommendation to take this to the board.
Moved by Mayor Weiss.
A second?
Second.
Mersman.
Second. Thank you very much. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dawn. We have anything else today, Teresa? All right.
If I may, before we close, we do have a new person in the room that I wanted to say hello to for the first time myself, but also to the board. I'll let Janet introduce Samuel, who is Associate Counsel 2 for Legal.
Good morning to the board. I hope you know that right now you have 6 lawyers in the room from the legal team. You have the lion's share of the team is in this room, so be kind. You've got Dawn, you just heard from. We have Anna, Amy, you met before, who is our new senior counsel for labor and employment. John Sulik, who's our associate counsel for primarily labor and employment. And then there is a new person in the room. We're trying to get him around the building, but he has been so busy getting up to speed on certain things. It is Samuel Dodu, who is a new associate counsel specializing in a focus primarily on litigation.
Now, where are these people?
Yes, Samuel.
Are they at the podium? I don't.
That's the nod, Samuel, if you wanted to say a couple of words to our board to introduce yourself. You're on the hot seat.
I didn't
Podium's
prepare
right
him
there.
for that. I didn't prepare. I just wanted him to be able to see as many of the board members as possible. But if he wants to say something, he can. He comes to us from a private firm where he was working primarily on litigation matters. We're really pleased to have him on board. In addition to being an attorney in practice for in excess of almost 10 years, he is also in the Army Reserve, and so he's going to have to pop out at various times during the year. But we're really proud to have someone connected to our armed forces on our team as well. So we wanted you to at least have a chance to meet Samuel.
Is there something wrong with the podium?
Thank you, Samuel.
All right, now we can see what we're talking about.
Okay.
I guess I have been put on the spot. I do not have something prepared to say. I just wanted to say it's a pleasure. I'm not new to public service, and it's a privilege to actually be in this position. I hope that my time here would be as fruitful as I wanted to be. And everyone has been welcoming, and thank you.
All right, welcome. Give him a cheer. Okay. Thank you. All right, anything else? All right, you have anything else? We are adjourned until our next meeting. And the date is what? What's our date?
I'm sorry.
The next meeting.
What's the
meeting date?
August 29th. August 29th, 9 o'clock a.m., main office, Cleveland, Ohio. We'll have Reverend Lucas presiding. Thank you, and come again.
Thank you very much. And then motion, second? Thank you very much. All right. All right, Doc,